The vastness of the ocean has always been a source of wonder and adventure. For centuries, people have explored its depths and sailed its surface in search of new lands, riches, and excitement. One of the most iconic symbols of the sea is the pirate ship, a vessel that evokes images of adventure, danger, and freedom. But what exactly did these ships look like, and how did they work? What were their strengths and weaknesses? And what made them such effective vessels for plundering on the high seas? This is our channel, and today we will explore the structure of a pirate ship. So stay tuned to the end. It is hard to say exactly what a pirate ship looked like because there are no original examples left. However, we do have some pretty good ideas based on written descriptions and artistic representations from the time period in which pirates were active. While not an exact replica, one of the best representations can be found in the 1950 movie Captain Blood, starring Errol Flynn. In this swashbuckling adventure, Flynn plays Peter Blood, an English doctor who becomes a pirate after being wrongfully imprisoned. The film depicts a fast and maneuverable ship with multiple masts and square sails, which is consistent with many written accounts of pirate vessels. Another good representation can be seen in the 1970 movie The Black Swan, starring Roger Moore. This film shows a larger ship with more firepower, which is also consistent with some descriptions of pirate ships. While there is no single definitive source for the appearance of a pirate ship, we can piece together a pretty good idea by looking at various sources and considering the needs of a vessel that would be used for piracy. Generally speaking, pirate ships were small to medium-sized vessels that were fast and maneuverable. They needed to be able to sail well in the Caribbean waters where many pirates operated and had to be able to move quickly to catch their prey. Many pirate ships were sloops or schooners, which are relatively small sailing ships with one or two masts and triangular sails. These vessels were fast and easy to maneuver, making them ideal for piracy. Other common types of pirate ships include brigs and schooners. Brigs were larger than sloops but still relatively fast and maneuverable. They typically had two masts and square sails on both, giving them more speed and power than sloops. Schooners, on the other hand, were designed for speed and could reach high speeds when the wind was right. They were often used for smuggling and privateering, which was a form of legalized piracy. The size of a typical pirate ship varied depending on the needs of the crew and the type of piracy they were engaged in. Smaller ships were easier to maneuver and required fewer crew members to operate, making them ideal for crews of around 50 men. Larger ships could carry more crew and cargo, making them better suited for longer voyages or for crews with more than 100 men. Most pirate ships were between 60 and 100 tons, which is relatively small compared to the large merchant ships of the time. The design of a pirate ship was not just about speed and maneuverability, but also about functionality and practicality. Pirates needed their ships to be able to transport goods, withstand rough seas, and defend themselves against enemy ships. The hull of the ship was typically made of wood, either oak or pine, which were strong and durable. The deck was usually made of a single piece of wood, which made it easier to move around the ship. The masts were also made of wood, usually spruce or pine, and were rigged with square sails, which were efficient for catching the wind and propelling the ship forward. The sails were typically made of hemp or linen, which were strong and could withstand the harsh conditions at sea. The rigging of the ship was complex and required skilled sailors to operate. The masts were supported by ropes and cables, and the sails were attached to the masts with wooden yards. The steering of the ship was also complex and required a crew member at the helm to control the rudder and adjust the sails as needed. But the design of a pirate ship was not just about the structure and function of the vessel. It was also about how it was perceived by others. Pirates wanted their ships to strike fear into the hearts of their victims and to be a symbol of their power and independence. Many pirate ships were painted black, which was associated with death and danger. Some ships had red or green paint jobs, which were also eye-catching and memorable. Some ships had skulls or other menacing symbols painted on their sails or hulls, which served as a warning to potential victims. Overall, the design of a pirate ship was a reflection of the needs and values of the crew. Speed and maneuverability were important, as were functionality and practicality. But the appearance of the ship was also important, as pirates wanted their vessels to be both feared and admired. Now let's take a closer look at the different parts of a pirate ship. The hull of the ship was the main body of the vessel and was responsible for keeping the ship afloat. It was typically made of wood, either oak or pine, which were strong and durable. The deck of the ship was the flat surface that ran from the front to the back of the vessel and was where the crew members walked and worked. The masts of the ship were tall, vertical structures that were attached to the deck and supported the sails. They were usually made of spruce or pine, which were strong and flexible. The sails of the ship were large pieces of fabric that were attached to the masts and used to catch the wind and propel the ship forward. They were typically made of hemp or linen, which were strong and could withstand the harsh conditions at sea. The rigging of the ship was the network of ropes and cables that supported the masts and sails. It was a complex system that required skilled sailors to operate. The rudder of the ship was a vertical structure at the back of the vessel that was used to steer the ship. It was attached to the tiller, which was connected to the helm where the helmsman stood. The cannons of the ship were mounted on the gun deck and were used to attack other ships and defend the ship from attack. They were typically small in size compared to the cannons on larger ships, but were still powerful enough to cause damage. The hold of the ship was the storage area below the deck where the crew stored food, water, treasure, and other supplies. It was a dark and cramped space that was difficult to navigate, but it was essential for long voyages. The cabin of the ship was the living space for the crew and was located on the upper deck. It was a small and uncomfortable place to live, but it provided shelter from the elements and a place to sleep. Pirate ships were not without their weaknesses. While they were fast and maneuverable, they were also fragile and vulnerable to damage. The wooden hulls and masts were susceptible to leaks and breakage, which could sink the ship or make it difficult to sail. The rigging was also vulnerable to damage, which could slow down the ship or prevent it from sailing at all. Additionally, while pirate ships were armed with cannons, they were not as heavily armed as larger merchant ships or warships. This meant that they were vulnerable to attack from larger vessels and often had to rely on their speed and maneuverability to escape. Despite their weaknesses, pirate ships were effective tools for piracy. Their speed and maneuverability allowed them to catch their prey off guard, and their cannons were powerful enough to do damage. The design of the ships also allowed for quick loading and unloading of cargo, which was important for pirates who were often trying to escape with their loot. In conclusion, pirate ships were fascinating vessels that played a significant role in the history of piracy. They were designed for speed, maneuverability, and functionality, with a heavy emphasis on the appearance and symbolism of the ship. While they had some weaknesses, such as their vulnerability to damage and heavy reliance on speed and maneuverability, pirate ships were effective tools for plundering on the high seas. Their legacy lives on in popular culture, and they remain one of the most iconic symbols of adventure and freedom. We hope you enjoyed learning about the structure of a pirate ship. If so, please hit the like button to stay up to date on our latest videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.